So I've been waiting on some mail because I actually am finally doing some mods to my bike. So what do we have today? We have parts from 12 O'Clock Labs and we have parts from Thumper Talk. So here it's all laid out, man. We have the Drc Edge 2 taillight, and then we have the holder for it. And the reason why I got this from Thumper Talk, because this holds a US spec license plate, where they're usually meant for Japan license plates, considering the company. So you get this holder from Thumper Talk. It's powder coated, it's really nice. I like the fit and finish. And for an extra like 30-40 bucks, I got the LED flashers, you know, for the signals on the side. So what I got from 12 O'Clock Labs were these connectors. So yeah, let's see what the old one looks like. This was the one thing about my bike that I was not very stoked about when I first got it, where this was just such an ugly setup. We're gonna chop that off, man, and we're gonna have the new kit on this today. I'm just gonna disassemble certain things before I even put the light on the bracket and whatnot. So right now I'm just gonna take off the plate. It looks like an 8 to 10 mil socket. I'm gonna take this off. There's two screws, I believe. There's a missing one right here, and then there's one right here, and on the other side it's the same. And there's some that are up in there that I need to take off. But basically, I'm gonna take off this whole fender right here, because that has to come off to expose the subframe. There it is. Let's get cracking. So with that, we have the 11mm socket to use for your license plate. I just want to take that off right before I take off the entire plastic shroud. So when taking off the seat, we're going to deal with 2 bolts on each side. That's actually going to use a 10mm socket on our ratchet. So that'll take off both those on each side, and once we take those off, you can actually slip off your entire seat. Now you'll notice that there's a shroud on the side that I'm going to pull off, and that's just because I want to do that on both sides before taking off the entire seat. So now that we have this seat undone and everything's kind of taken apart for the most part, we still have to take off the rear fender. This is going to be the main rear brake light, and these two are going to be the turn signals. So brake light, turn signals. Right now I'm taking off the rear fender part just by undoing the bolts on each side, just to remove that and have it loose so I can easily pull that off once the whole entire rear fender comes off the bike. There's a screw right there, So we're gonna shove a little 10 mil socket in there and get this fender off. So by taking off the rear fender with those 2 bolts, it will now expose the zip ties that hold down the rest of the wires to the subframe. So we can go ahead and chop those off, so we can now release the entire rear fender with the tail light and everything, and then that will completely expose your subframe. With the subframe completely exposed, we can now go into the wiring process. So right here what we have is the 12 O'Clock Labs OEM connector kit. Now I apologize for the non-focused image, but right now we're connecting red to red, black to black, and orange to yellow in this case, because the brake light has a yellow wire at the end of it that matches with the orange for the OEM connector kit. Now what I wanted to do was solder this connection, and that's what's heating up right now. I have an electric solder and a little bit of solder with it to really connect the bond well, to make sure that there's no faults in my wiring. Alright, so I'm going to show a little clip of me soldering the wire. Now this is definitely not my forte by any means, but a few things that I learned while soldering is that 1, you definitely need solder that's going to be the right size to the wire you're using. There are different sizes to solder, and this is way too large for the wires I'm using. This is just something that I had to make do with because this is what I had. Now when soldering, make sure that you don't clump it up too much like I did with this wire, because it's too much excess and you don't really need that, and it makes it a little bit of a pain to put the heat shrink around it. Now when you do solder, make sure you find a nice hot spot on the soldering gun to help melt it onto the wire and really create a strong bond between the two. So now that we've soldered all the wires to the OEM connector, we can now unbolt the nuts from the brake light and install it into the bracket. Now when you do this, you want to hand tighten the nuts, just because when we place everything onto the bike, we want to make sure that everything's fit and secure before we lock everything down tight. So one thing I noticed while screwing this into the two tabs along the subframe is that the spacers that come with it make it so it screws straight in and it's flush, and there's no nut that you have to put on the back of the bolt. The bolt actually goes straight into the subframe. So I'm just hand tightening this. So when it comes to mounting the turn signals onto the bike frame, what you're actually going to have to do is, once you get the turn signals, it actually has the nut and the washer already screwed onto it within the wire. Now you're going to have to unscrew that, pull it completely through the wire as I already did, as you can see, and then pull the wire through the mounting hole. Now when you pull it through the mounting hole, you can then put the washer with the nut back through it, as you'll see right now. And the reason why you do this is because the OEM connector kit is actually too large for the nut and the washer to go through. Now I actually ran into this issue where I wired it up beforehand and I had to chop it again because I didn't do it this specific way. Now when wiring up the turn signals, you might be curious as to which one is which with the left and the right. So I actually have a diagram that I found on 12o'clocklabs.com, and I'm going to leave that right here. Alright guys, so once you have your light installed and hand tightened, before you button everything up, it's always a good measure just to plug in everything and make sure that your lights are working like I'm doing right now. It's always good to do, just to make sure that there's no faulty connections, there's no short in your wires. So where we're at now is we have it installed, you know, it's snug, everything is fitted in. You're gonna have to wire this, and the best way to do this is to zip tie it just like they did along the frame. But I just wanted to show you guys kind of, you know, how to put that in there. So I'm gonna zip tie this right now. Alright guys, so we are done with the installation. We buttoned up all the side panels, the seat, everything on this bike is all buttoned up. And look at the wiring, man. We have the zip ties holding down, it has the flush mounts so these don't catch an edge. And look at that against the subframe, that's super clean. So I actually found a little wiring pocket where you could put all the excess wires right in here, where it's not gonna rub up against the exhaust and burn through. Now with this seat, there's a little section in it where it has these rubber mounts on the sides where it actually, you know, holds all the weight. But there's this part that comes down like a plastic knife, really, where I bunched up all the wires here at first, right underneath. If I could pull up the seat and show you, I would, but I had it all buttoned up. And basically that part was coming down on the wire where I had it at first. So for all the people who are wondering how to wire this and how to get rid of all the excess underneath, put it in this little pocket right here where it's going to be safe, because it's not going to touch the exhaust pipe, it's not going to get smashed by the seat. It's the best place, in my opinion, to leave all the excess wire. It looks so much better than the stock, the stock Fender with a huge plastic shroud. It was so ugly. But this was like 110 bucks, 100 bucks or so. So if you guys want to make, you know, the rear end of your bike look so much better, just a lot less going on, I definitely recommend the Drc Edge 2. I want to do a seat upgrade where I'm going to do a seat concepts upgrade, because look at that gash, that is nasty, and I'm really trying to get rid of that. So I'm going to do the seat concepts kit, actually, where you keep the seat pan and pull off the cover and the foam, and then put on the seat concepts foam and their cover and everything. So I'll do a whole tutorial on that and show you everything that I learned, every little snag I ran into. If you guys have any questions or comments about the Drc Edge 2, please let me know. If you're using it, you know, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's not too complicated at all. But like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment, you know, shoot me a message, anything you guys want. So as always guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.